I received a telephone call from a Mr. Saleh. He said, can you help me? He said, the Americans took my money and they hurt me very bad. And I just came from Abu Ghraib. He told me of one incident where he was stripped nude and they tied a rope to his penis with 7 or 8 other men. And then they would, these were American personnel, he's telling me, and they would push one man and all of them would fall and they'd be joking and laughing and mocking him. I would ask him, who was doing this to you, Mr. Saleh? And he would say, well, there were 2 types of people. One was dressed some type of military personnel wearing the army. And then the other type would be in civilian clothing. I go, what do you mean civilian clothing? He goes, like normal pants, like any normal pants and a normal shirt. So that's the first time when it struck me that there's another element being involved here in Abu Ghraib, another type of person there.
كان يوم أحد. يوم الاثنين كانت حالة من الفوضى ومن الإجراءات الأمنية الشديدة. يوم الثلاثاء اللي هو يوم اعتقالي ذهبت إلى عملي، مو عملي أنا، يعني كنا في موقع عمل في منطقة الحصوة، فأني أعمل في مجال الكهرباء. تم نقلي إلى سجن أبو غريب في بداية عام 2004 باليوم الأول من الشهر الأول لعام 2004. كان أكو شخص مدني واقف بيتأمر، يعني ياخذون أوامرهم من عنده اللي هم الشركات الأمنية. أدخلوني إلى الزنزانة، كبلوني وتم خلع ملابسي بالقوة. يعني أسلوب من أساليبهم أنه القبض التناسلي للرجل، يلفون عليه حبل ويجروه هيك مثل عملية الخنق. شنو الغاية من عندها؟ شنو هاي الأبرة تضربون إياها اللي أنا هسه حاليا حتى أطفال مدى يصيرون عندي؟ شنو الداعي لأنه جيش يستعين بشركات أمنية مدنية للتحقيق مع معتقلين؟ بس أنا أقول لك هاي شركتين مؤكدة، شركة تايتن وشركة CI.
When I saw the photographs for the first time, and I said to the commander of the Criminal Investigation Division, who was showing them to me, I said, why are the translators around the prisoners? Why are the translators in the cell block? And he said, ma'am, those aren't translators, those are khaki interrogators.
Khaki was hired by the Department of Interior out of a little town in Arizona called Sierra Vista, and they were hired to do database work. And that contract, which was sort of a blanket contract that allowed them to do a whole bunch of different things, was used to do interrogation in Abu Ghraib. So what ostensibly was a contract to do clerical work or IT work turned out to be getting information not from a computer but from human beings in a notorious prison in Iraq. At the time of the scandals in the spring of 2004, roughly 50% of the interrogators were private contractors.
This amendment, Madam President, attempts to address what I believe is a very legitimate and serious concern that have come to light in recent days with respect to the use of, or misuse of, contractors in the treatment of detainees in Iraq. Quite simply, Madam President, this amendment would prohibit the use of contractors in interrogations of prisoners and in offensive military operations.
It just seems to me abundantly clear that we cannot hire private contractors to perform a function as inherently governmental, inherently sensitive, indeed inherently explosive, and for which there must be accountability, as is the interrogation of prisoners.
Corporations exist to make a profit, and when they're hired to do jobs, whether it's the provision of water or the interrogation of prisoners, their job is to get as much work as possible, make as much profit as possible. Now that doesn't work in the field of intelligence, period.
You do not put personnel who do not have allegiance and 100% loyalty to America, you do not put them in sensitive key government activities like military intelligence gathering.
It creates a conflict too, because we were uncertain, we knew what our chain of command was. That was very clear, and we were forced to memorize it and follow it. But what's the khaki chain of command?
بفضل هاي الشركات السجون أصبحت معسكرات للتدريب على العنف. وفوجئت بالاعتقال، وبالفعل بعد يومين نقلت إلى سجن أبو غريب، ورفع الكيس من رأسي ووجدت نفسي أمام مجموعة عسكر مجندين يعني من دول المحققين عرفوا فيما بعد، مجموعة حوالي 8 أو 10 يقولون علي يضعون البندقية بأماكن حساسة بالجسم، وبالإضافة إلى الضرب. وكنت أسمع فيه استغاثات ناس تستغيث من تعذيب أو من ضرب ونباح كلاب.
There was a wink and a nod approach. We have these rules, you're going to follow them, but we're not going to spend that much time making sure that you're going to follow them. And if I don't know about what's going on, then I can, have plausible deniability.
The contractor is safely in an office in the United States somewhere, so no direct supervision. And to just simply say, well, I guess they got out of control, I don't know where they were taking their instructions from, it seems to excuse all of them.
I have reproduced an excerpt from the job posting as it was reprinted in the Washington Post on May 10th on the poster here behind me. And let me read it for you. It says, under minimal supervision, will assist, and goes on. Key words, under minimal supervision.
In 2003, the Pentagon essentially panicked, and a very desperate Secretary of Defense did whatever he had to do very, very quickly to try to get more intelligence. If that meant running out and hiring a bunch of contractors who didn't know what they were doing and putting them wrongly into the chain of command of military intelligence, that's what they did. They were desperate.
The contracting business in Iraq is very, very lucrative.
There was so much money being given away over there to contractors. I mean, there were jobs that didn't even need to be there. We'd go into the tent to use our internet, and the woman who would put my name down to assign me to a computer would be a civilian contractor who was making 6 figures to be over there. Why is she there? Why are we paying this woman to do this?
They threw so much money at these people they can't refuse. I mean, if you're a mechanic, you're making like 20 or 30,000. Someone offers you 100,000 a year tax-free to go to Iraq, and that's hard. I think that's really hard to refuse.
They would very often sit down with soldiers, particularly from Reserve or National Guard, and say, hey man, what are you making, $3,000 a month over here? I make that in a week.
You would talk about how, in 8 more months, I'm going to be out of here and I'm going to be making 140 grand.
It certainly affected retention, because I don't know why any military person would re-enlist to do the same job when they could get out of the military and make 6 times the money and do the same job.
There was a little phrase that we threw around, food for freedom, that if you wanted to get paid more, you should start eating more so that you'd get booted out for being overweight. And it's an honorable discharge, and it would boost your pay, your net worth by about 5 times if you were to do such a thing. And it worked.
جو علينا الامريكان بال11:30 بالليل، واخذوني انا وابني. فابني دا يقول لهم هذه امي. فاجا الامريكي جرني من ايدي حق، قال لي جو سكو هيك حيل صح. فقال لي اعترفي، اذا ما تعترفين على الارهابيين اللي وياك راح اوديك مكان يعتدون عليك ويلعبون بيش طوبه الامريكان. فأحسن لك أحكي أنت وابنك.
I was getting really angry. I mean, especially because I knew that a lot of these prisoners that I saw with these injuries from abuse and torture really hadn't done anything. They weren't part of the insurgency. They were just picked up for no reason at all.
We were interrogating taxi drivers and like pizza delivery guys. It was just, we called him Average Ahmed.
Using methods such as torture and also using people who are not qualified to do this job has resulted in bad information and therefore problems for national security and for the soldiers, because you're getting information that's no good.
In a lot of areas where you start noticing a lot of, a lot of hostility against American soldiers, it's not because the soldiers are doing a lot of wrong things. It's because sometimes maybe the communication that has been transmitted to them has been transmitted to them wrongly and professionally and serving someone else's interest. These are Titan linguists. They were hired by Titan.
Titan has long-standing contracts providing critical information technology and support services for some of our nation's most valuable defense assets. Under a contract with the U.S. Army's Intelligence and Security Command, Titan has over 4,000 linguists that provide invaluable mission-critical services.
Titan is the company that provides the linguists and continues to provide the linguists throughout Iraq. They're the biggest provider in this business.
They were so desperate to get people to fill these positions as translators that they were just hiring anybody that approached somebody and obviously had command of the English language in addition to the Arabic language or Farsi or whatever it may have been.
There was people who maybe spoke the language, but it was broken, but could not read it or write it. And I'm talking about English here. And they were hired. They were never given a test. Nobody was given a test. I was never given a test. The test I was given was a phone conversation for a minute. Military trusted us. Military trusted Titan. Titan came and said, here's a linguist that we have hired, we have trained, tested, we put our trust in, he passed his security clearance, or he got some kind of a clearance. You should trust him in everything he does, everything he says.
I did work closely with Titan all year long while I was in Iraq. And I can say that a lot of the translators weren't trained at all. I don't know what kind of training they received, but they were terrible at it.
There was no managers, there was no supervision, there was no training, there was no follow-up. There was whatsoever a system of evaluation of what linguists are doing or what they're doing, even a system of if these linguists really translating or doing, or really are they translating or giving their opinions. Titan made the big bucks and hired the most incompetent people most of the time, did not follow up with them, did not really know what they were doing. Probably as a result, a lot of people got hurt, a lot of people got killed, American lives got lost because someone wants to make money and wants to have a fat check in his pocket.
Here you have the MPs who engaged and participated in horrific conduct are being held accountable for their actions. Why aren't the U.S. contractors, the civilian corporate personnel, why aren't they being held accountable for their actions?
If you are a U.S. soldier and you hurt an Iraqi civilian and that becomes known, you will be court-martialed. But if you are a U.S. contractor and you kill an Iraqi civilian and that becomes known, you will be sent home. And then you can come back the following week and you can work for a different contractor.
So here we have the two ringleaders of abuse at Abu Ghraib very explicitly saying, in many cases, what was happening was they were being ordered to abuse these detainees by civilian contractors. These guys are in prison for 18 years total between the two of them, and there's no contractors in prison.
My question is in regards to private military contractors. The Uniform Code of Military Justice does not apply to these contractors in Iraq. I asked your Secretary of Defense a couple months ago what law governs their actions. Mr.
I was going to
Rumsfeld.
ask him. Go ahead. Help.
Well,
I'd pick up the phone and say, Mr. Secretary, I got an interesting question. This is what delegation, I don't mean to be dodging the question, although it's kind of convenient in this case, but never. I really will. I'm going to call the Secretary and say, you brought up a very valid question, and what are we doing about it? That's how I work. Thanks. Yes, ma'am.
Are any of these allegations being investigated?
My recollection is, and I think it's okay to say this, is that the investigations are ongoing.
Yes, sir.
And that time will tell.
Somehow these contractors have leveraged power in Washington, and the government feels like they want to protect these people. They want to protect the security of these contracts, and they want to protect them from prosecution.
Most of the managers and most of the people we dealt with working for Titan were ex-military officers, high-ranking officers.
All major military contractors have a board of directors and a senior management that is composed of senior retired military personnel. And this allows them to be able to go get contracts.
Secretary of the Air Force, former acquisition type President Bill Management, Barbara Susan Gold, Deputy Director, NSA.
Washington is a phenomenally incestuous place. Retired senior officers, Capitol Hill staffers, and defense industry. You know, the usual suspects come back again and again.
Also my former officer or any